Blessings and welcome everyone. Just a reminder before we begin. Your rising sign horoscope will give you additional clarity as to how a great deal of your sun sign horoscope may show up, and your moon sign horoscope will give you the less prominent side story that'll also be playing out for this 2-week period. Remember, horoscopes serve best when observed, like a weather or traffic report. You have influence over all outcomes with your thoughts, actions, choices, and deeds. Use the information that presents to help you make the highest choices for the highest outcomes. If you wish to schedule any of my services or like access to more content via my Patreon, follow the links below or go to my website, integrativemysticism.com. Blessings, everybody. How's it going? It's time to have a bit of a big chat about what is coming up here with this full moon in Leo, January 28th, 2021, and how that is actually going to really set the tone and the big focus between the 28th of January and the 11th of February, and what is going on with this big T-square. What I've actually decided to do is actually turn these lunation videos into their own deal here on YouTube, and that way we can go really, really deep, especially in the first portion of it, talking about what every planet is doing, what they're doing in each sign, and then at the end, I will talk about where that is falling for each and every sign, just like I do on my Patreon when we do our weekly talks on Fridays at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, US and Canada. If you're interested in checking that out, again, you can always follow the links down below. And don't forget, Biweekly Tarot is going to be coming out here shortly, so make sure that you come back for that, because we are back on a bi-weekly system. And I noticed some folks were asking about weeklies, even though we switched to bi-weeklies at the beginning of the year. If you have not seen your bi-weeklies, go to my main channel page by clicking on my avatar and go to the playlist where they are. You can just click on the playlist title and scroll through and find your videos. And of course, if you ever want to get a session with me, you can always go on ahead to my website, integrativemysticism.com. A full moon is all about a major chapter change, a breakthrough and a transition that is raising the roof on the energy, whatever house it's in order to make a story change or transition and open up a new era. Now, this full moon is going to be activating several other planets all at the same time, creating what's called a T-square, which consists of an opposition to the Sun and Jupiter in Aquarius, and a firm square to Mars in Taurus, and a slightly less exact square to Uranus, also in Taurus. And so this 2 weeks between the 28th of January and the 11th of February are pretty intense. Now, I do want to mention that this is actually an aspect that creates what we might call a lot of positive stress. And there is such a thing as positive stress. Remember, it's a cognitive distortion to try and simplify and boil things down into black and white. If it feels good, it's good. If it doesn't feel good, it's bad, right? Because, you know, that really just makes a very inaccurate perceptual compass. And what we want to do is remember that even though we are going to be talking about stressful things, therefore the positive, and we're going to be talking about positive things that will be stressful in the transition period, right? It's not going to be something that happens overnight, because a full moon does last in its influence for 2 weeks, just like a new moon. And so let's talk a little bit about how this is actually setting the tone. This full moon opposite Jupiter and square to Mars and Uranus is all about breaking out of something that has become fixed or something that has outlived its quality. And this is, of course, because we are dealing with a fixed T-square, right? Leo's a fixed sign, Aquarius is a fixed sign, Taurus is a fixed sign. And if you are a fixed sign, Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, even Scorpio, you're going to be feeling this a lot more intensely than maybe the other signs, the cardinal and mutable signs. And it's important to remember that even though you might be feeling it intensely, it's still a breakthrough for you. When we have a full moon opposite Jupiter, there is a miraculous opportunity, right? There is a huge surge of abundance, whether this is coming in the form of material abundance, social abundance, opportunities, road openers, breakthroughs. This is where we start to see the 2021 year really start to kick off. And this is going to be fueling the raising of quality or raising of value of a lot of areas of your life. And this is going to, however, also make them go through a bit of a sift. That's the tension of the opposition. We are sifting out things that might be a bit dense, a bit dysfunctional, or maybe a bit too jittery to actually provide any kind of consistent prosperity, happiness, ongoing expansion, and growth. So with this full moon opposite Jupiter, it's going to be all about what is mandating an enhancement to everything around you. Now, this is also going to then provoke sometimes a bit of too much. So we want to make sure that we temper it. Let this energy be something that you work with consistently throughout the 2 weeks between the 28th of January and the 11th of February. Do not try and cram it all into one day, because with the full moon opposite Jupiter, there tends to be a bit too much, and there is such a thing as overworking something. Jupiter is working on cultivating the best, whatever the best is. But it is possible for even the best sculptor to over-chisel and over-chip a marble sculpture and actually turn it into something that can't be necessarily used according to intention. So we want to be mindful. We want to be in our mastery, right? We want to make sure that we're not taking things too far and that we are tempering ourselves. The square to Mars is also helping out in a big way, because Mars is saying the solution is to actually start using this energy, this new abundance that's coming in, this new love, these new social connections, this big picking up of traction, by putting it to use where we can actually start doing some immediate problem solving or challenge solving in our lives. Now, when we say in our lives, remember that Saturn conjunct Pluto is commanding and assisting those who are actually working on their microcosm, right? Bringing this all on home, not getting overly preoccupied with things and narratives and journeys that have nothing to do with one's own personal growth, and allowing for those who are actually productive to really get a big jumpstart on their year. Mars in Taurus is about solving problems in areas that don't seem to grow. They don't seem to evolve. Maybe there is a resistance to growth. There's a resistance to progress, a resistance to learning, a resistance to education. And that's because with Mars in Taurus, there is a need to see where we need to establish maybe the new platform. Because Taurus, with Mars in Taurus, we get to really see the double edge of the Taurus frequency, right? On one hand, you have this big practical focus on nurturing, on healing, on bringing a great deal of stability and, of course, prosperity into our lives. But in a lower polarity, Taurus can sometimes get a bit stuck and be almost a little bit too, attached to certain routines, certain patterns, trying to make outdated things work or be relevant when they're not. And so we all have Taurus somewhere in our chart. Okay, this isn't about profiling, right? That's kind of not where it's at. We're not talking about any one particular sign as I'm doing this intro to the lunation, guys, okay? So don't be that person who starts commenting, oh, well, this is what I think a Taurus is. This is what I think a Leo's. Please don't. Not in this one. Not in this channel. As we get on to Uranus being involved, Uranus is revolutionizing what our perception of ideal is when it comes to our ideal conditions, and helping to break away things that maybe we have tried to make work that do not work for us, or things that we have adopted, things that we have copied, things that we have maybe gotten accustomed to, or things that we've become too dependent on, or any kind of indulgence that actually stymies our growth and stymies progress, evolution, and advancement in all areas of our life. All areas. And with this full moon T-square, what we're all going to see over the course of this 2 weeks in our own individual journeys is where we can actually completely do an overhaul on our environments in a way that actually puts us with, whether it's the best people, the best schedules, the best new discipline, the best new routine, the most complementary and the best vibrational match for the best outcomes. But let's not forget that sift. The best way to get through this is to be open and practice non-attachment. So we are also going to have to face maybe a guilty conscience or two, or maybe where maybe our lower egos are aware that something's unhealthy, but we keep trying to make it pass for healthy, or we keep trying to say that it's something that it's not, right? Sometimes a full moon square Uranus can actually challenge us to pay attention to where, okay, we see the better thing. Where are we gaslighting ourselves about something that's clearly not it? It's time to be stepping into that spiritual maturity, because with all of this, right, we don't want to be blowing a lottery ticket on buying more lottery tickets. We don't want to be blowing a big breakthrough on maybe, something that ultimately is going to squander it, or it's not going to pay off. We have to pay attention to where we are investing our time, energy, and resources. Really taking stock, okay? What is the foundation upon which I built all of this stuff? Have I done this mindfully and with discipline and intention and grace and with passion? Or was it maybe built on emotional cues? Or was it sort of something I just wandered into? Was it something that wasn't intentional? If somebody asks you what foundation, what's your discipline, what's the core of it, and you don't have an answer, that might be a cue that something needs a bit of an overhaul. And this is bringing in so much positive energy to really knock it out of the park, especially when it comes to projects you're working on, relationships that you've got going on. It's also, however, bringing that very strong, let's just say, no tolerance for distortion, no tolerance for dysfunction, no tolerance for toxicity, no tolerance for that which does not raise in its quality with it. And so we're all going to need to be, of course, very accepting, very honest with ourselves, and not spin yarn about what we're working with and what we're dealing with. Aries, this is going to be going on between your 5th house of love, romance, your relationships with your kids, anything that you're trying to birth or manifest into the world or physicalize, whether it's a creative project or maybe monetizing a talent, anything that involves love languages. It's also affecting your 11th house of friendships and social networking, your community, your biggest goals and ideals, and your 2nd house of earned income, employment, and your value system. So that's where a lot of you Aries people are going to be feeling this the most. Taurus people, this is going on between your 4th house of home, family, your roots. When we say family, in astrology, we're technically talking about blood relatives and adopted family and chosen family as it connects to you. All right, we're not talking about in-laws and things like that. 4th house is about what is yours. We're also talking about your living situation, household arrangements. It's also focusing on your career, your legacy, how you want to make your mark on the world, your passion, how you do your work in the world, your upward mobility, how you actually establish a platform from which you actually give back to the world, and where you work as an authority in the world. And then it's actually also affecting you, right? Mars and Uranus are in your 1st house. Your self-identification, your self-expression, your modus operandi, how you actually interact, put yourself out there, how you view yourself, and what kind of character you're bringing to the table. Gemini, this is occurring between your third house of communications, pacts, promises, commitments, your peer group, as well as your ninth house of your reach, your relationship to the world abroad, your relationship to the rest of the world, higher education, your spiritual practice, your spiritual philosophy, your world view, as well as your opportunity to interact with a greater expanse of people, right? Your reach. And this is also occurring with your 12th house. Mars is in your 12th house of your past, your privacy, and your hidden zone. What is going on behind the scenes. And so you're going to be also needing to pay attention to where things that you've maybe compartmentalized a bit too much, kept in the past, or maybe been kind of struggling with, dealing with as far as, what is going out versus what's staying in. A lot of you are going to get a chance to do a major shift in the direction of that ability to have the most trusting and the most open, honest communications and build the best bonds all over. Cancerian people, this is occurring between your second house, earned income, employment, and your value system. And we're also seeing your 8th house of shared resources, big exchanges, intimacy, and self-generated income, and your 11th house of friendships and social networking. So what are we giving? What are we receiving? As well as how are these exchanges going on with the people in our lives? Is it an equivalent exchange? How do we raise the quality in all of these areas? Do we find bigger and better opportunities to move on to, reasons to drop certain situations that we've been caught up in with either our work or joint finance or joint projects, maybe even our friendships? Do we also find that certain things actually are going to be evolving into more golden and better versions of themselves? Absolutely. Leo people, this is occurring with you, right? This full moon's happening in your first house. So your self-identity, self-expression, your modus operandi, how you carry yourself, how you express yourself, how you get things done. This is also occurring in your 7th house of partnerships, closest one-on-one connections. As you've heard me say before, romantic partners, spouses, BFFs, business partners, roommates, all the people you have your closest one-on-one connections to. And we also have it occurring in your 10th house of career, upward mobility, your legacy, how you make your mark on the world, how you put yourself out there, and the changes that you make in the world around you. So these big overhauls are really going to kind of clear a lot of what you've been and what you've been connected to, clearing a lot of what you have actually been doing. And a lot of you may be finding that this almost evolves so much of your life's work and your personality that you might actually need to get back in touch with recognizing yourself. For you Virgo people, this is occurring with your 12th house of your past, your privacy, your hidden zone, your 6th house of work, your reputation, your schedule, your teams, as well as your 9th house of reach, your relationships to the rest of the world, your spiritual life, higher education, as well as your connections abroad. And so a lot of you Virgo people are going to be finding that you are starting to clear a lot of attachments from the past, because a full moon in the 12th house can be a bit of a breakdown, breakthrough, but we're clearing a lot of things that we've carried into 2021, and we are stepping into a space where we are working with the best, getting the best connections, the best projects, the best opportunities, and expanding into a space where we are also growing that community and population. Libra people, this is occurring in your 11th house of friendships and social networking, and your 5th house of love, romance, your relationships with your kids, as well as anything that you are trying to create, birth, and bring forth into the world. And it's also happening with your 8th house of shared resources, passive income, as well as intimacy and big exchanges. And so many breakthroughs with affection and with love, romance, exchanges of maybe even prosperity is also going to have you rework a great deal of your community and maybe even the love languages that you express, what you feel attracted to, and paying attention to signals and whether or not signals serve you the same way they did before, or if they ever had. Scorpio people, this is actually occurring between your 10th house of career, upward mobility, right? We talk about your legacy, how you make your mark on the world, your 4th house of home and family, your domicile, living situations, chosen family, adopted family, biological family, natal group, whatever's going on there. This is a big one, and it's also occurring with your 7th house of partnerships, your closest one-on-one relationships, the romantic partner, spouse, BFF, business partner, roommate, all your closest one-on-one connections. A huge overhaul of what these arrangements are, where these stories are, redefining, rewriting, maybe even going through a bit of a purge or a swap in a lot of these areas in order to have the best quality of life all around. For you Sagittarius people, this is actually occurring in your 9th house, higher education, your reach, worldview, spiritual life, your connections to the world at large, as well as your 3rd house of communications, pacts, promises, commitments in your peer group. And we also have this connecting very strongly with, of course, Mars and Uranus, which are in your 6th house of work, your reputation, your schedule, and your team. And you're going to be finding that a lot of you Sagittarius people are having this really bring up the concept of rewriting your idea of culture and getting you into the most complementary social, working, and even to a certain degree romantic and familial conditions when it comes to actually creating the perfect culture for you. And it's creating. It's not, I don't feel this is like adopting or enmeshing or being along for the ride or being towed along. For you Capricorn people, this is between your 8th house of shared resources, passive income, intimacy, big exchanges, and self-generated income. So self-employment monies, for instance. This is also occurring with your 2nd house of earned income, employment, as well as your value system, and your 5th house of love, romance, your romantic languages, your relationships with your kids, anything that you're trying to birth into the world, manifest, give life to, whether it's a creative project, your own personal business, really stepping onto the scene. A lot of support is coming in for you Capricorn people to have not only some very, very big breakthroughs here, but this is also going to assist with bringing in the right people to actually facilitate and co-create. The Aquarius people, this is actually occurring with your 7th house of partnerships, your closest one-on-one connections. Again, the romantic partner, spouse, roommate, BFF, business partner, you, your self-expression, your self-identification, your modus operandi, how you carry yourself, and your 4th house of home and family, living arrangements, your relationships with your blood relatives or adopted relatives, as well as your chosen family, again, the domicile, all across the board. And so really raising the quality of life in all of these areas by actually, it's almost as though this new atmospheric energetic standard is facilitating this very, very strong evolution. Everything raises now. Everything raises vibration now. If it doesn't make it, if it can't be, remember, as I've said before, if it can't be blessed, if it can't be raising its vibration, it's got to go. And a lot of you are going to be finding that, this might be changing how you conduct yourself with certain family members, certain habits that you have, maybe certain choices that you and partners make. All of this is, the roof is raising here, but it's bringing positive stress for positive outcomes. Piscean people, this is occurring with your 6th house of your work, your reputation, your schedule, your teams, your 12th house of your past, your privacy, your hidden zone, and then your 3rd house of communications, pacts, promises, commitments, and your peer group. There's going to be a purging of a lot of circular journeys and maybe vicious cycles, as well as contracts or burdensome associations, attachments, as well as adjustments to who you're serving, who you are working with, right? The quality in maybe the customer base or the client base, the quality of your peer group, removing disparities when it comes to talent, passion, ability, inclination to actually dedicate themselves to the highest interest of all concerned, right? Really moving away from maybe a casual kind of environment into more of an aspirant type of environment, especially when it comes to some big moves you want to make in your personal prosperity, in your whatever you're trying to be enterprising with, your social affiliations, as well as also getting a chance to really give something that is very near and dear to your heart or something that you left in the past its real chance. So that is what I've got for you guys. I hope you liked this format, this sort of just boof, run through all of it. If somebody does want to timestamp things down below, I am not averse to that, and I will leave comments open. Don't forget to check out your bi-weekly tarot. I'll be having those coming out here just as we get to the end of this week. And I think I will actually just keep the astrology and the tarot separate, so people will have more content coming out on a consistent basis. And remember, it's all on a bi-weekly system now. And if you ever want to get a session with me, you can always go onto my website, integrativemysticism.com.